Good.
All right. So, hello and welcome to the Meredith and Cameron Show. This is my friend, Cameron Allen. He is a fantastic astrologer and yogi and herbalist with many talents. And I don't know, I just kind of got the feeling that like we could really, have a good conversation about astrology, the upside down world, the sun, what it's doing. And but before we get into like the meat and potatoes, I want to ask Cameron, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm well. I woke up really early this morning. There's a specific type of cleanse that I'm like practicing right now or like learning. So I'm in practice to like making it a discipline.
Mhm.
And so I've been waking up earlier and earlier. And this morning I woke up at like 4 a.m. And so I've been up since around like 4 a.m. I took like a little meditation nap and then I worked out. So I feel like really good. And I feel like my day is almost over. So it feels nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember back in the day, I was working at coffee shops and stuff like that. And I would get up at like 4 a.m. and by 2 p.m., I would be like, all right, that's all, folks. I would take like a long nap.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious what kind of cleanse you're doing, or like what are you waking up at 4 a.m. to have kind of like a practice, like your own, like,
It's like I'm learning the practice. It's not Vrati, and it's like a cleanse from like the yogic tradition. And
cool.
so, yeah, that's what I'm like, and I'm still just like learning it and feeling into it every day. And then I just took a class the other day over like self pulse, and they were talking about it, and I had heard like two other people talk about it. So I like missed day one essentially, and so now
Mhm.
I'm just like feeling into it. And then I also have been seeing a lot of things in my astrological practice in which like a lot of things are coming up for people when they say during this cleanse, like when the seasons are changing in this time, it's like I forget the exact days, but it's like a 2 week, 2 to 3 week period in which like things manifest for people, whether that's like sickness or like if they've had some things going on psychologically, emotionally. So that's
Mhm.
why they do cleanses at that time, and that's why I'm doing it this time because I see that happening this year. And it's like every 2 years I find something new during the seasons to like tune into from a different
Mhm.
tradition. It just happens to like cross my pathway. And the more and more I do that, the more and more I can like be of assistance to a more universal type of person, which means this person, that person, doesn't matter what person. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what's up.
Totally, like beyond beyond my expectations. Not that I have any really, um but yeah, no, that's cool. And it's I think perfect timing, like as I mean, here, like in the South, we have seasons, and so I think that it's like a perfect time with the weather getting a little bit colder, like, the leaves starting to fall, and, you kind of like strip yourself bare a little bit during that time if you're moving with the seasons and not like against them or away from them.
Yeah, totally. That's so true. It's been making their life so much easier ever since I just started following the flow of it all. It's
Mhm.
just, yeah. When I see things starting to like shed, I just start to do it inherently now at this point. Like when I first started, I would like go into like full on fasts for days. But after I like found so much extremity with that versus what I was already doing, which was extreme, it like kind of started finding its balance. And I started
Yeah.
just finding like wisdom in it all rather than just going hard or doing this or just doing that, like finding like the beingness in it. And yeah, and that's the issue sometimes. My mom, she always used to tell me like we're not human doings, we're human beings. So we always gotta like find the being and like what be happening right now, what be happening outside, what be happening to me. It's like instead of what I'm doing and like results.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
So yeah.
interesting. I think there's a real wisdom to being in time correctly. Like, being able to kind of, whether it's through astrology or like, psychic senses or whatever it is, like being able to kind of like perceive the seasons that we're in. And I think there's like a real method to that extends way, 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 way back, like ancient. So I respect that.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, how old were you, and like what was going on in your life when you found your way to a more like mystical path, like when you discovered astrology and like started to dig into it for real? Like what was happening in your life at that time?
Yeah, when I first started digging into astrology for real, I was like, that wasn't that long ago, honestly. It was like 2015. It was like 2015.
Mm,
But before, I had read some things in like alchemical texts. And so I was like introduced to the planets mostly, more so than just astrology as a whole. And I didn't dive
mhm,
into anything besides the energetics of the planets. And then so yeah, in like 2015, I started learning about plants, and then they guided me to the planets because I was working at a spiritual supply store, and I would just open up books and just read a bunch of just different books, whether it was like hoodoo, Wicca, like Egyptian magic, everything, anything, you know. So
mhm.
I would just read those and see planetary correspondences all the time. And I was becoming a budding herbalist in my community, and so I just started connecting the two. And then I drank some tea, and it told me to go to Portland, and so I went there, and then I got some more information there, and that's when I started digging in.
Love it. So, remind me again. I think I remember, but I want you to say it. What are your big three? What's your sun, moon, and rising?
Sagittarius rising, Aquarius sun, and Gemini moon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's an interesting, it's very, very masculine.
Yeah, but I have like 6 planets in Capricorn too, so
Nice balance.
it's interesting. It's an interesting thing, the way it like plays out.
So I guess your stuff, like the last couple of years, has really been lighting up with like Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto and like what they're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, Leo for sure. And Pluto's been going through my first house since like 2007, 2008. If you're looking at it from
Yep.
a quadrant system, so I I got like really good expressions of the Jupiter and the Saturn, and even when the Mars was there and the Great Conjunction, the Great Conjunction was like, wait, no, not the Great Conjunction, the Pluto and all those pile up in Capricorn rather, like all
Mm-hmm.
those were like right on my Saturn, my Mercury, and my Venus retrograde. So I was feeling it, and the way it's expressed for me is just like going into my career fully, honestly, as an astrologer, as a energy worker, as
Yeah.
a herbalist, as a writer now too as well.
Ooh, what are you
So it was
writing?
nice. Like I got stripped away by Pluto, and then there was nothing there but things to build upon. Sometimes it's nice when when you get stripped away. And
Sometimes,
the things
you know, like
the things afterwards tend to be nice.
sometimes your spirit really lays you bare. I don't have any like late degree cap placements like in my first house, but I do have, like the North Node, Lilith, Uranus, and Neptune like all together in my first. And so, but far enough away, thankfully, from that conjunction. But I still felt, I mean, it was still in my first house. It was like everything that you thought you are, you're not. And here is who you actually are, like without all of the bullshit that's like not you, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, and tell me if you agree with this, because sometimes, we just get these like thoughts or pings, and, it's good to get confirmation, I think. But what what I felt like was the opportunity there with the Capricorn pileup was an opportunity to kind of deprogram a little bit from, the systems that we grew up in, and to kind of like distance ourselves from them any amount.
Yeah. And the way I look at it is like as if it was an invitation to do so, like rather than like
Yes.
it was that, because there's some people that I feel like have been even more crystallized in it, which is like totally Saturnian Capricorn. It's like the crystallization of the way that someone's like consciousness is like working and functioning. It like stayed within the structure or the boundaries or limits of the system. Whereas other people were like restructuring and becoming their own authority. in the system. And so, yeah, I'm with you 1,000% on that.
Yeah, I think that I love that you just brought up the word authority and like, I don't know, just finding yourself to your own inner authority, if that's something that you want to do. That was the invitation. I think of like Saturn and Capricorn, and kind of came to this peak point in January of last year when I can remember, like, even before like Rona, hit, like I remember here anyway, I can remember like a lot of the clients that I was seeing and a lot of my friends and myself, we were all kind of like, oh, this job just does not serve me, or like, oh, this relationship is like not, it's not tethering me to a identity that I want to be associated with or be a part of, And I think that that's ultimately healthy. I mean, and even the way that the planets have been continuing to move, these conjunctions, weird squares, like the outer planets are really doing their thing. And I think this is extremely transpersonal time. So it's really, what do you think about, oh, this is a good question. What do you think about, what do you think about like free will versus destiny, and like the way that astrology factors into that?
I think they're consorts. I think they belong together always and forever. It's like, what is free will and what's fated? It's like you have to figure that out, right? Like if you really want to know, like you have to kind of like go about your life in a way in which you play with them, or feel into them, or ask questions about them and meditate on them and observe like life as it is. So yeah, like, I just feel like that's like a whole like that's a whole program to create when it comes to like learning like free will versus fate, and like how to be able to even maybe see it. Like, can you read the language of life to begin with? Because if you learn how to see omens, whether that's through numbers or animals or plants or just like revelation, if you can do that, then maybe you can start seeing fate more clearly, and maybe you can start seeing the places where fate is just like a point in time and you get to choose, and you change things. So yeah,
almost like fate as like the higher self's free will, maybe. I mean, I don't know, that's kind of how I've been. So then it kind of like makes it imperative to become aligned with what you are as a spirit.
That's a beautiful orientation. I like that. And also, even just if one taps into that from that perspective, or that's my own projection, the way I just tapped into it was like, if you have a higher self, whether that's higher or like deeper within, whatever somebody wants to feel into it as, like, or both, so it's like whenever you do that, you just like go in deeper, though. Like if you're looking at it from like a higher self that's outside of space and time or more etheric, then like drawing that in is like, it just like grounding things into reality is like helps you create fate or change fate or be in a relationship with fate where it's like more dynamic and an interplay rather than it happening to you, or you feel like you do everything in reality, which like there's this high polarization of people like, I can create what I want, and other people are like, no, you can't create what you want, and that's harmful to some people. And I'm like, cool, I hear both of y'all. Also, why don't you just like exist within like a maybe of both or neither, and like figure it out, rather than like combating each other over this thing that's just like actually more damaging to your emotional and like mental health than it is having to take a stance so rigid that you fall over whenever someone else speaks.
Wow, you just said a mouthful there, and like a great one. Because no, I mean, that is like ultimately, I think like humanity's biggest problem is not like questioning itself and then standing so firmly in a side or another side, and not realizing that like there's so much more nuance and there's potential within the in between. And I think maybe that can only be found at the center of ourselves. I don't think that somebody else, like, and the books or the teachers or the science or the whatever it is, like, I don't think that that's going to tell us or show us, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but I think during these,
back to the authority thing, it's like My friend Arkai, when she talks about Capricorn, she talks about authorship, right? Which is like authority. And it's like you defining your own reality, you defining your life, which makes you your own authority. And automatically when you define your life, you have boundaries, you have more boundaries, you know? Whereas like
Mhm.
people try to like create boundaries from like this external place of that person did this, like, oh no, you didn't. Like what the hell? Like you just create like sense of self and definition in your life, and that'll just automatically create the boundaries necessary for you in your life.
Totally. Boundaries. Like, what is that? Not really. It's just that's an easy, very reflexive thing for like a Pisces moon is just to be like boundaryless. And that's I've had to.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. When I talk to people who have like a decent amount of Piscean influence, or even just feel like they have a boundarylessness. Yeah. Whenever they have that, then there's ways to make that a boundary, like how to create boundaries within it, but still also like figure it out and allow yourself to flow. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've gotten really, really good at that, like helping people with that, like being able to still flow and not feel like they have to like get really boundaried and rigid about things,
Mhm.
while also like figuring out like you can't just be out here in these streets like with your heart like wide open and your root like not fully functioning or your sacral fully functioning. Just like it has to all like really tap in.
It's a great way to get really depleted really quickly. So,
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna
yeah,
start
I
writing
think.
about that too.
Oh, what?
I'm gonna start writing about that more too, like coming up in the future.
I love that. What are your writing projects that you have going on right now?
Yeah, so I write monthly articles for Yoga Journal, like the
Mm,
astrology forecast, and then I'm gonna be doing more articles with them just over astrology in general.
hmm.
And yeah, so I also have some more stuff on Yoga Journal. There's some about the 8 limbs of yoga, and then I have also talk about herbs on there.
Oh,
Yeah,
very cool.
hmm
What
which I
is
really like. Highly recommend people go read the one about the herbs.
on
Highly
Yoga
recommend.
Journal?
Yeah, just
Maybe
type in
you can,
Cameron Allen Yoga Journal herbs.
if you send it to me, I'll put it in the show notes or the description or whatever.
Cool, cool, will do. Yeah.
So, what is your favorite herb right now and why? I don't mean
My
to
favorite.
interrogate you, by the way. I feel like it's
It's
like,
okay. No,
okay.
no, it's all good. My favorite herb right now is cordyceps.
Hmm.
Cordyceps mushroom. It's really strong. It's potent. Yeah, I think it's cordyceps. I think that might change in like a month or so ish. I'm gonna start working with black seed a lot, and like
Hmm.
black seed until Saturn leaves Aquarius.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Yeah. I
I'm
guess
starting
that's in
looking.
like what, 2024?
Not when Saturn leaves Aquarius. I don't think it'll be 2024. It's 2023, I believe.
2023. Okay,
Yeah, so
cool.
it's a good bit of time. So yeah,
Black
I'm
seeds.
looking black seed. Yep, and
Nice.
I'll be working with the black seed oil too, and just like see
Okay.
what I can create with it. I'm looking forward to it because it does so many different things, and I'm so Saturnian. So it's just,
Absolutely. I think it's interesting though because you have, yeah, like just such a nice balance. Like you have a lot of Capricorn, right? But then you obviously have like, the ability to seek truth and to kind of predict the future. Not, I mean, within reason, you can kind of see where trends are going. You have like foresight. And then I don't know, like the moon in Gemini, from where I remember it being, is like just like the humor button, like that allows you to like see the humor and shit. Sometimes Capricorn energy can be really serious. Like that's what I found with my own anyway. I have to kind of like remember, like, I'm a Leo, like I'm not really supposed to take things as seriously as I'm taking them. But um let's see. So one thing that I've really enjoyed with regard to cordyceps, but also like all of those like, really powerful, potent mushrooms, lion's mane, turkey tail, reishi, like all of those, is that they really help my brain to be like full functioning, full force, like in a way that I haven't really seen much else do. And I think that's really important right now with the North Node in Gemini. I know that that's not the head or the brain technically, but there is kind of like a like nourish your mind component to that.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's super important. I mean, just even in the age of air, or just like we're us being around all this electricity and information in general, it's super important.
Mm-hmm.
But then you take the North Node in Gemini and you like make that extra. And so, yeah, that can definitely like dry things out. So the nourishing quality of the nervous system is super important. And mushrooms, I feel like they're always great for connectivity in some way. So that makes total sense, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's in the gut brain. So I think the gut brain gets a lot better when mushrooms are introduced.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's part of the reason I take them actually is to kind of like improve that. And I don't remember what I was going to say. I think I was going to say something about I was just going to drop right into like the Internet of Things, because you brought up the age of air. Mm-hmm. And how like, you know, between all of the different routers, all of the different Alexa, Amazon devices, or all of the different devices, smart devices, whatever, there's like this web of information and we're kind of walking through it all the time, irrespective of whether or not we acknowledge that it exists. It is there. And, you know, I kind of think about like mycelial networks and the way that like mushrooms help trees to communicate, you know, and the way that we help trees to communicate. I think of like that as like the upright version of the upside down world, Internet of Things, you know, and the collective consciousness maybe too. And I want to talk to you about like what you're noticing in your community and like the kind of conversations that you're, you know, observing and what like kind of what's the vibe where you're at. And you can say where you're at on here, but you don't have to. I'm not gonna like, you know, dox you or whatever. But
yeah, totally. Yeah. So I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, and the vibe that I'm getting where I'm at is people really starting to look to themselves to take care of themselves, you know, and so that's a really big thing just going on around. Just how can you take care of yourself actually without, you know, being codependent on a system that doesn't help you, doesn't support you. So how can we do it ourselves? And also how can we make change within that system, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like the both and again, like learning how to be sustainable on your own while also doing the things you need to do while the system is still here, not upholding it and not like completely not using the resources that you can gain from it so that you can remove yourself from it and just like keep that in like a harmonious balance and in truth, and the truth is true for you rather than an idea of what you should do, whether you should be stuck in it or you should be uprising against it. And it's just like there's so many things in between and everybody's in different places. And even like the acknowledgement of I can go in it real quick and do something and then go back out of it and then see how that works. And it's just like there's so many dynamic ways of being right now. And so that's what I see, and that's what I'm like talking to people about and learn a lot about in so yeah.
It's like so self-sufficiency, I guess, is something that you've been kind of dipping into, like learning more about. Well, I know that like, you know, plant medicine is very, very sustainable. It's very like, you don't really need a medical system, for example, when you know like what herbs can cure, at least like on a personal level, you know, so yeah, I think all of that is really good stuff. And
yeah, and I still in my practice need to learn how to identify plants way better for that very reason and just reasons beyond that. So that's important. It's important to know the medicinal value of herbs, but also just being able to identify things in your environment, which, you know, when even you said self-sufficiency, I'm thinking about like everybody I've been talking to is like it's becoming more communal, and also we're like learning how to do things on our own. So, because if something hits the fan, people have these ideas of what they're going to do, and it's just like, cool idea. Like, how about we all connect, and then how about we all go home and still do what we got to do, and just figure stuff out in that way, and just share. You know, I always like when I was younger, we were like a lot of people always used to say, each one teach one. That like I'm doing my thing, each one teach one. And it's like if that's not your thing, it's my thing. So now you know a little bit of it, even if it's just the baseline of the legitness
Mm.
of like the subject.
I love that. Each one teach one. And that makes total sense to me. One of the things that has come up a lot, you know, that I've been banging this drum, right? The like, you know, if shit hits the fan, what are you like? What is your contingency? Like, what are you going to do that allows you to still survive and thrive? And how it feels very Capricornian too to me to like put those kinds of things in place before, you know, and it's interesting how, oh gosh, I've been like wanting to talk about this with someone, but maybe this is a little bit like bad. How one side of the astrology community I'm observing is like, yeah, shit could hit the fan, you know? And then the other side is like, no, the system will always be here. It's just like, I'm not, you know, naming names or anything. It's just an interesting, and it's not better or worse, I guess. Like it's just different choices. What are you choosing? I think that's something that like Saturn coming direct today has kind of spoken to me, is like, what are your choices? Like, what are you choosing? But what do you think about that? About the divide in communities and the spiritual community and the astrology community and the plant community with the North Node in Gemini makes sense. You know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is one thing that's been like really amazing about how I've grown in my own practice is that like I've been here in Memphis, Tennessee with people, you know? So it's like whatever divide there is online or in the community that people are calling a community, and I don't know if there's necessarily even communities to me necessarily. They might be, they like depends on how somebody defines it. And so whatever, I leave that to other people.
Sure.
But what I can say is that I know people down the street. I know people I make house calls to go see. I know people I just like on Wednesdays when I'm off or not do if I'm not doing anything. Sometimes I run tinctures like to 3 places in the city. So it's like I leave that to those people who feel those ways about those communities. I try to my orientation is to digest information, use what's healthy and useful for me, and then just get rid of the rest. So because that's my orientation, a lot of times I don't have as much fucks to give to a lot of people. And because also I don't have fucks to give because I care a lot. So since I care a lot, I can't give a fuck. That's what I say, you know? It's like I'm doing a lot, and so I gotta like not worry about certain things, especially if I feel like I don't have control over them, especially if I feel like it's not even my lane. I might have an opinion about something, but if it's not my lane, then I just stay in my lane, do my thing, and help guide people because that's what I've been like shown that I'm supposed to be doing. So I do what I'm supposed to do, and that helps everybody.
Isn't your sun and the North Node together?
Yeah.
Ooh, and it's in Aquarius in your second, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Like you're right on point, you know, kind of like help. I think of like, and obviously this is like medical-ish astrology, but you know, Leo is the heart, and then like Aquarius like gets the blood where it needs to go. And I think like you kind of like mobilizing to bring like the resources that people need to hear, you know, I could like, and I'm not trying to read you or anything, but I could see you like being a leader and like creating, you know, counter systems, not as a reaction, but just for people who don't want to go do this, you know, here's this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. In the counter system, I guess that I would say that I would create just like wherever's, I'm really good at seeing the conditioning in the environment that I'm in, or that's on like the planet, kind of in a sense. And then like, like zeroing down to one person and like helping them decondition from where they're at. So to counter the system, all I do is speak to a human, you know, like that's what I do. And wherever they're at, I just counter the system that's been like implemented in them or in ways that we haven't even thought about it. There's so many ways that we just like haven't even thought about how we've been conditioned that's so incorrect and current. And some of those things we call practical when actually they're like the most illogical, irrational things ever. So it's just like, you know, there's like people who say they don't like drinking water when they're like mostly water themselves. And so, just stuff like that,
which really
that's
like,
really hard. It's like when people argue about complex things, sometimes I'm like, some people don't even go into the bathroom properly, like it's weird out here in the street.
right. Yeah, that's interesting how you said some people say that they don't like drinking water when they are water themselves, which like, of course, because I'm like all eighth house crazy, I think like, wow, like what kind of like self-loathing connects like, blah, 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 and I mean, so I've observed in myself, I can only speak for like the work that I've done on myself, the work that I've done with others, but I'm just going to speak to me. Like I've seen so much programming, so much. We all have kind of, I think, like layers and layers of maybe impositions or like, and I think that this is the time personally to be like breaking out of some of those things, and like getting a little bit more space in some of the places where we've been previously feeling confined and kind of, caged or, yeah. So I have a question about the astrology for the rest of the year and into next year. So, and I want to talk a little bit about like the US, if that's cool. I've done a little bit of digging into the Pluto return and like the US chart and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of curious what you are seeing or like what you could see as like a like potential for the Pluto return next year and the time kind of leading up to that. I know that's like a really big question and no pressure. We can just talk about it, but it's,
Yeah, no, that's good. So the chart that I work with, Pluto in the second house in the US's chart. In the second house could have to do with like finances, resources, the things that you have. It also could do with greed, scarcity mindset. It could do with have like the feeling of wanting to feel held and like you have enough. And Pluto's coming back. So it's like all the shadow shit of like the money, the resources, and like how we have been empowered and disempowered other people by doing that, as a country. And also like feeling held, like as a country, like we literally don't feel held and we like feel like we want more and more and more and more and more and more and more because we have this scarcity mindset. Where like some people think like they're getting so much money or they're getting so much wealth when actually like they're doing it from like scarcity. Because they think they need more, and they think they need more, and they think they need more, and they think they need more. And so I think that's coming up a lot. And also just people's values, like what do you really, really value? Like what do we value as a country and where are we going to go with that? Are we going to abolish the system for real or is the system going to transmute and ground down? That's another thing that like people need to be mindful of. So yeah, I would say all those things and just like, yeah, people in the US, all the shadow shit's coming up.
Definitely. And I've talked to a couple of people about this and about like the US, and I have kind of like there's a broad sea of opinions. There's people who think that like the US needs to fall. There's people who feel patriotic and like they feel like an allegiance to country. Personally, I kind of come from the perspective that like it began as like a Masonic, type of like experiment. And there's a lot of bloodshed that happens in the name of like the US elsewhere. And I don't really know. I think that there's a lot of people who are championing, the fall of the US that would not enjoy that as much as they think that they would,
Yeah, 1,000%.
What?
I say 1,000%. No, I get that. Like, yeah,
Right? I'm like, like you really like, even though I say this, like, I don't know. It's like we have like for a long time, like maybe, and for some people, there's been like more freedom, more options, like that kind of thing. But I think it's kind of been like we've been presented with like so many different types of bagels, but then like I think I've felt that the kind of freedom that we have here has been maybe a little bit illusory, you know, like, and it's like, give them the choices of the kind of bars that they want to decorate their prison cell with, you know, I mean, within reason. Just that's just been the intention, I think, behind like letting Americans or whatever on such a long leash. And I see a choice point for like us as a nation, you know. I think I see kind of like the need to come together, maybe, but the resistance to doing so because of all of the, you know, the ways that we've been kind of divided and separated.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the term is, but what do you call it? I think it's called like an open air prison or something. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah, like that's the flavor that it has sometimes,
Absolutely.
or it's inching towards more and more, or it's just like always, or like kind of in a sense like there was a net casted, and then like the net is just like coming closer and being more concretized. So yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that, and I hear that, and I know people who feel like they've gotten out of that, and I know people who are figuring out how to become independent of it while still being around it. And
Yeah.
so I'm just over here taking notes, me honestly, like because I feel like if something hits the fan, then the omens will speak, and so I'll act accordingly because I get very primal, so I don't really worry too much about it.
Exactly. And I think that instinct, like some of that instinct, my opinion, comes from our spirit. Like if we are able to hear the call, whatever the call is in those moments, even when it's loud out here, you know, then I think we're able to go in the right directions, you know, like for myself. And this is kind of like a weird, you know, side street to take, but like last year I had a series of visions, and I don't put too much on them, but I do kind of keep them in the back of my head. And one of the directives that I got from my spirit was like, don't go on any ships. And if FEMA like tells you to go one way, or like the like government or whatever like tells you to go one way, like go the other way. But I have these directives, and like I'm not going to ignore them for anyone, you know, like.
Yeah, I don't see why you would. Yeah. Intuition and instinct override like other humans' ideas of what they think reality is for me, because I just have not listened to it so many times in my youth that it's just like it's completely ignorant, and like people don't understand that, and it's totally fine. I respect it, and I have compassion for them because I'm like, cool, like forgive them because they don't know what they do on some like this, you know, like they don't know what the fuck just came through me or what I feel. So I see why they're upset. Like, oh, yeah, I get it. I get it. Why you think that's a problem? I'll holler at you later. I'm going this way, you know?
Yeah, following. So there's two things that I'm noticing that I'm noticing, you know, in like, and I live in a pretty like liberal, progressive city, you know, and I'm noticing that there's a couple of things that are being like kind of demonized. And the first is like looking into shit, researching shit. And, you know, the second thing is having like a deep understanding of what your spirit is saying and then going with it. I think, you know, you and I both have probably been in a lot of situations where our spirit, you know, it'll give us like a tap on the shoulder, or it will give us a nudge, and then it's a push, and then it's a slap on the face, and then you're kicked into the when you try to keep ignoring like what it's saying. And I think that is like how I'm living my life, because I usually always benefit too from that direction. And I think that direction comes differently for different people too, you know. So
yeah,
great time to figure out how to listen to that, and like whether it is numbers, whether it is symbolism or visions or whatever, you know.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a lot about with the Sagittarius and Gemini nodes have been like there's like beliefs from the past or like a moral compass from the past that people like said should be. And instead of having that like moral compass that was taught to you based off of your old emotional identity, it's like
Mhm.
really grounded to like your intuitive knowing of like what your journey looks like. And then moving forward, there's like information in every moment that you can like play with, or you can be like rigid on, or it's just like so much information that you can get over activated by it. And
Mhm.
so yeah, that's how I've been like walking in this nodal process, and with the thought in mind too of even thinking about like moving forward to next year with the Taurus and Scorpio. It's like, am I going to emotionally abandon what my intuitive instinctual knowing of my journey is? So it's like the Scorpio is the emotional abandonment, and then the knowing that I just got going through all this Sagittarius stuff, and moving forward, like the information, the way I organize my mind moving forward in the Gemini, it's like, can I
Mm.
ground into that and create some values that are really like actually sustainable for my life and my livelihood, and
Mhm.
then making me feel like I'm independent slash interdependent, rather
Yes.
than codependent and thinking I'm independent, or being codependent, or thinking I'm independent and like not even like relying on assistance.
Exactly. Yeah, I think either end of that spectrum can be like non-beneficial or like not healthy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some people, they could be really independent and survive, and they're like really far on one side. And I know a few people like that, and I just, they're going to be good if stuff hits the fan. They also got like some psychological, emotional issues, but they'll be fine though.
Right,
Like
right,
they really
right.
will. Like they're gonna.
Totally. Oh my gosh, that was so funny. I could not live like that, and I tried to, I think, like go it alone and go my own way and all of that stuff. Like with the nodes, like for me, like on the first and the seventh house axis, like I've tried both of those extremes, and I like having a healthy, healthy place in the center for sure. And yeah, I'm watching that nodal transit and I'm like, interesting, and the North Node in Gemini has felt very hermetic for me. It's felt very like, I don't know, like almost it's an opportunity, an invitation. You don't have to accept it, but the door is open, it's there, of kind of finding your own center point and your own still point that exists between all polarities and all this versus this versus this versus this, and I've really been like working on centering that. And it seems like there's a solidifying coming, like with the North Node in Scorpio and the South Node in Taurus. Like it's not that things aren't always fluid or that you can't always outcreate whatever it is, but like I sense that there's like a couple of different directions that people are going, and I think at a certain point like that becomes maybe a little bit more fixed. I don't know if that's like next year, but I think that I'm interested to see what happens, with the nodal transit. For me, like another kind of directive that I've received about it is that like if you align with life, whatever life is, like, creation, nature, whatever that force is that like is creator of all things, like if you align with that, then it will align with you. So too will it, and so that's a nice, like, I think that the earth will provide for, people that give back to her and work with her.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm like up in the air about it. I don't know if that's truthfully. Um,
Right.
we'll see. I don't know. It's like there's so many different combinations of like how reality plays out. But I definitely feel like that's definitely going to be more so true for like me and people in like the United States in a lot of places, because we do have like, I mean, people are called them privileges or whatever, but it's like we have these resources, and based off of like the predicament that we're in, to be able to, yeah, to make that happen. Whereas in some places they don't even like have yeah, they barely have the capacity to do it now. So it's like, yeah, and they've been taking care of Earth, and so yeah, that's the way it is.
And then I guess like I would expand my definition of nature. Like I think of like being loving towards like another human or being loving towards like an animal or like whatever it is. Like that's so you can do that anywhere, you know, or like
Mhm.
even being loving towards yourself, you know, is you pouring back into like the foundation of your essence, you know, who you are.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that like the trauma response though with the South Node in Scorpio, I'm watching that. I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be messy, 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 which like I don't mind that because I'm like used to that kind of energy, but you know, I
Yeah.
think that it's another opportunity. The door is open. You don't have to walk through it, but it is open. You know, it's another opportunity, I think, to just heal your shit, you know, like,
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I agree thoroughly. I'm
oh,
even like, yeah, I'm even like feeling into like just building my endocrine system. That's literally that's what I think of when I'm thinking of this nodal shift happening. Making sure I like can get rid of and expel things that I've been holding on to in my like deep emotional body and releasing it from my physical body too, so that I can feel spacious and comfortable and
mm-hmm,
yeah, oriented on the planet in a way that, yeah, like you said, like pouring back into the essence and like that being about taking care of nature. So if
mm.
you take care of your nature, then you'll be able to take care of nature in whatever other way or form that looks like.
I think, yeah, like it's kind of, it's like one benefits the other. Like when you continually release, and like, I guess the way that I might say this is like releasing what's not me, which is a
Mhm.
lot. You know, we've all had like many, I mean, not all, some of us have had like a lot, several thousand lifetimes where like we are like imprinted upon and then maybe don't have like too much time in between to like heal and to rectify some of that stuff. So I think that like, yeah, I feel like, don't you feel like you've just done like lifetimes worth of inner work like in this life?
It feels like I've had a lot of different versions of myself, so I could say that for sure. I also am always curious around if it takes a lot of lifetimes to feel that type of I feel like I'm dealing with a lot of lifetimes, or sometimes I also feel into like if there's a lot of planets in the 12th house or stuff in Pisces as well. Oftentimes it's like the identity is getting rid of a bunch of residue from multiple lives. So it's like experienced as I've had 1,000 lifetimes because all these things are coming back and I'm dealing with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we use it, and that just brings up that thought. So I just want to share that. And so yeah, it's something I'm curious about, and I like look at charts and I talk to people about it, and yeah, I still haven't figured it out, but just want to name it.
Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, like at a certain point, like what is actually time? And like, you know, are all of these things happening at the same time? And like we're, you know, I've been feeling into this that I think time is beginning to fall apart, like, but for real, like I know maybe over like the last like 10, 12 years, there's been like it's like harder to keep track of, you know, times, dates, like for me anyway. And I do think that like when there's no time or like whenever time decides that, you know, it's up, whatever that means, I think it does bring us into more like all of the, I mean, every second that passes is a version of us, you know, and every, you know, so we have all of these different selves to join with, I think, and that, so it's like a stripping away of what's not us, what's not me, what's not you, and then coming, like almost coming back to what is from, you know, mm,
Yeah. It can definitely, yeah, I feel that. And with stuff going through Capricorn, I just feel like, you know, a lot of the natives around here that I have met, you know,
mhm,
they call things like white people time, or they say colored people time. You know, they'll
mm,
say that. So it's like there's just two different things, you know?
mhm.
White people term would be like, the structural, like, it's like putting something on me. And
Yeah.
it's like right now, right now. And then like their time would be considered to be more just like the fall time is now, is the time to go in and grieve and like,
Mhm.
give celebration to the people that we've lost before, so that we can continue on and release these things from ourselves, which is ourselves
Mhm.
in another way, just so
Yeah.
yeah, just depending on what kind of timeline you're on and like how much you're actually experiencing like chronos time, which is like linear time, versus like
Mhm.
how you experience kairos time, which is more like the right time to do something, or like a specific time that something's occurring. And then there's the aeon, and there might be more than that, but those are the three that I tend to like think about or be philosophical about in my own time. Because
Oh,
the aeon time is like the timelessness one,
the
which is
perpetual now.
but yeah, like that's my favorite one to experience, which I
Mm.
just know I go through all three of them in play, and I
Yeah,
like learn from them, and they're all my teachers. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it currently. And then, when shit changes, then I'll change in my orientation towards it.
totally. Um, so you brought up on your Twitter account, which kind of spurred me asking, you to come on here. Like you were asking, or like you were sharing what was going on with the sun. And I'm just wondering, like, even without like being super, researched on like the academic or like intellectual component of it, I just want to hear like what you feel and what you think, and kind of like trade thoughts on that, because I have some as well. I'm just kind of wondering, like, what do you think about
Okay.
it?
Um. Mhm. Yeah, so I've been just like paying attention more to the sun and the moon and the light that they give, and
Mhm.
like how I can like drink that in,
Mm.
and like how I receive that in my body. And so that's just like I've been just like feeling into the sun and the moon in general. So that's where it starts at. And then I've been listening to there's a something called the Philosophical Minds podcast. It's a great podcast. I love it. There's a lot of interesting people on there. Some of it can be hard to keep up with because they're like talking about like Tesla stuff when I don't even know like the first thing about like an electrical wire. So kind
Yeah.
of interesting to like tune into, and it is getting me back interested into science, because since I've been conditioned in a certain type of way, I like rejected certain types of science, but now I'm coming back to like my own understanding of things. And so it's cool to hear these people talk about stuff. And someone was talking about the sun and Venus cycle and how it works with certain types of bacteria, and then
Mhm.
the sun and Mercury cycle and how it works for certain types of bacteria. And so I listened to more of what that person had to say, and they started talking about like solar. That was a solar cycle thing I was talking about specifically.
Mhm.
But it was cool that a lot of people started talking about like the solar flares, and then some people were talking about like how the sun is like beaming down neutrinos, and it's just like a lot of different things came of that. So that's what I was talking about when I said that, and a lot of people took it in a different way, and I was
Myself
responsive to all
included.
of it. It was great. I loved it all, and then I started like I now have like a list of like things to like study or look into at least a little bit about the sun and its
Mhm.
cycle, and yeah, how it affects things. And the sun also affects electricity on the planet in a certain type of way. So that's something of like big interest to me, having my south node in Leo and then my north node in Aquarius. And I also think Aquarius has all what to do with electricity. And
Yeah.
so the sun and electricity in their relationship is just like learning and deepening that relationship will help me with where I'm going moving forward, since I project that the north node is my emotional density moving forward, and the south node, Leo, be my emotional identity that I'm integrating or letting go of certain parts of it in the
Mhm.
present moment, Gemini, moon. So I'm learning this information to integrate it all in the reality. And so that's what the sun cycle thing is all about for me and my experience of life.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, you said a
I didn't
lot
know all that
there.
until this moment, honestly.
You what?
I didn't even know all that was true until this moment. Like I can, but it was all just already there. Cause I tend not to like think. I don't like that shit. It's too much for
It's okay.
me.
Leave it to me. No, no, no. I'm like, I don't know if you've looked into like human design too much. Are you a
Definitely.
generator or a manifesting generator or something like that? No?
No, I'm a
Oh no.
projector. In
Me
the last year,
too.
I've only worked over 4 hours, like 5 days in the last year, and that's like my biggest accomplishment last year.
That's amazing. What kind of projector are you? What's your authority?
Splenic authority.
Okay, cool. That's exciting. Yeah. So I guess like if I were to look at your human design, the top, like the bottom, there's bottom centers that are like defined, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
And there's a lot of open centers.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Mine is kind of opposite. So I have like what? I can't hear you now. That's super weird. Okay.
It'll come back. There it
There we
is.
go.
Okay, cool. So I have the root and the spleen defined, and everything else is open.
Okay.
So I'm
That's
very like, yeah.
no, that's awesome and really interesting. I have two defined centers also, and like the rest open, undefined. I mean, maybe there's some gates or something, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have like a defined head and a defined ajna, and everything else is undefined.
Wow. Okay. That's curious.
So,
Yeah.
so I kind of feel you, but like in the opposite.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
wonder
Totally.
I love you. So that makes sense to
Mhm.
me. No, but what you said too about like the podcast, kind of getting back to that, and you were tying it in with like your astrology, the North Node and the Sun together in Aquarius. Like I could not pick out like a better sort of like astrology for a leader. Like projectors are leaders as much as we like really are like fuck, like like living in a world of generators and but I think that yeah, like you kind of like delving into those spaces, like the Tesla stuff, some of the like more abstract kind of tying, spiritual stuff and science together, like actually merging them and marrying them. I
Yeah.
think if science weren't repressed, that would probably happen like sooner than later. I mean, but I think what you said too about yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to that podcast.
Yeah. It's some good stuff on there, and yeah,
Mhm.
like I like very in the early stages, but it's just like when I find something like this or like when it lands in me, it's just like, okay, cool, this is happening now. And so
Mhm.
I look forward to what gets revealed to me and how it plugs into astrology because astrology is going to plug into everything in my reality. So yeah, I look forward to talking about it with people and just continuing learning. And right now, I'm definitely in the super Gemini mode of it, just like gathering data and information until I can organize it in a way that feels good and cohesive.
Mhm. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes total sense. And I think that the solar flashes and the solar like flares, solar winds, solar storms, all of that stuff, like from what I've seen, has been kind of like on an incline or like an increase from, I mean, really when I started to notice it was like 2017, 2018, but I think that it's been probably happening for the last 10 or 11 years. And
Mhm.
some of the stuff that just on an incline, like some of the stuff that I've seen in some of like my memories and some of my visions are also like to do with this, that this is kind of like there's that some of the neutrinos or the quantum particles or like whatever it is that like we're getting the plasma discharges or like whatever it is, it's like causing us to like not mutate, I guess that's not the right word, but like evolve. And it's causing like from my perspective, from my intuitive sense, it's causing different aspects of our DNA to be unlocked. And I think that I don't see that really slowing down. I think that that's something it's happening now. We're in it, and I think that there is a lot of opportunity and potential for just individuals to advance their consciousness, however they, not that that looks the same for everybody even, but just, yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yeah, it's all observation for me now. So I'm curious to see what happens. And I'm also curious, like after this, like maybe we can talk about like the resources that you have, at least to like look at like how the stuff changes so I can start tapping into
Tracking.
more, yeah, in a more like disciplined kind of way. Just like feel into it, or at least like observing it with the astrology, even if it's just by eye first, and then get more like structure about it later. Because maybe one day when I get older, I'll be more of a researchy type of person. But right now, I'm just like experiencing everything.
What is your number profile in human design?
3-5.
Okay. Ooh, that's fun. Poke the
Yeah.
bear, poke the bear. I think that that's supposed to be like a really like rebellious sort of like counter to the norm, kind, not in a reactionary way. What is that, like the heretic? One of those, the heretic?
The martyr heretic, yeah. Yeah. So
That's awesome.
I like it, especially when I found out about it. But before then, it was a bit more difficult to tap into. But nah, it's good though. I like it, and now that I understand it, I don't have to be so like activated by the experience of it or become victimized by what my energy like just inherently brings. Lack of self-understanding does that. Lack of self-understanding makes you like feel like bad about the things that have happened or are going on because you don't know how your like energetics actually work. And or let me just own that for myself and let other people digest it how they will.
Yeah, lack of self-awareness does that, he says. I think that is so important. And what you are not conscious of inevitably has more power over you. So I think like kind of peeling the layers back and becoming conscious of more, whether that is, however that is, if it's in an analytical way or if it's in an experiential way, it doesn't really matter, like depending on what your like astrology is, what your design is. I think like having consciousness over something or of something gives it less power over you. Like you're already like psychically aware of it. And I think that that's really, really sage. And I think it's a way too to get out of some of these archetypes that I'm personally like so tired of, right? The victim, the martyr, not saying that like that's an aspect of your design, but like, when you're expressing like an unhealthy aspect of that, and I don't know, like the victim, savior, martyr, like these things, I feel like human history is just like on repeat, rinse, recycle, repeat with those archetypes. And there's such a profound thing that happens when you do take responsibility for yourself and your own and in your self-awareness and your own creation. I think that's like a huge piece and super important.
Yeah, I feel you. It's like the whole thing, it's like, yeah, it's everything. It's the thing that's underneath everything.
All right. Yeah. Well, this has been a great talk. I really appreciate you for coming on and talking to me. I think that, it's been nice. What has it been, like 6 months or something since I last talked to you, plus or minus a few?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. Maybe we said something here or there, but like actually had a talk. Yeah, it's been a bit.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to get in touch with Cameron, I'm going to put his information in the show notes or the description. And I'm also going to put the Philosophical Minds podcast and all of Cameron's work on herbs and from Yoga Journal. Put that on there as well. All right. Thank you, Cameron, for showing up, and have a great day.
You too. Peace.